Hello and welcome to the Raw podcast brought to you by the Sunderland Echo. My name's Joe Nicholson and we're back for another preview podcast ahead of Sunderland's championship match against Middlesbrough at the Riverside Stadium. So to preview the game, we are joined by Robert Nichols from Middlesbrough fanzine Fly Me to the Moon. Rob, how's things and what's the feeling like at Middlesbrough ahead of this game on Sunday?
Hi, Joe. Well, obviously, we're coming off the back of a couple of big cup games, and obviously the defeat that was quite a bad defeat at Chelsea. And I think we all think this is the ideal way of getting back into the swing of things and playing another big game, a big atmosphere. The ground's going to be totally full, and just looking forward to it. We're all looking forward to it.
Yeah, you mentioned those two games against Chelsea. Actually, Middlesbrough's last game was the game at Stamford Bridge because they didn't have a game last weekend because I think they were supposed to be playing Birmingham and they were in the FA Cup, so that game didn't take place. But beating Chelsea 1-0 at the Riverside, obviously a great result in the first leg, but then going there and losing 6-1. I mean, how kind of damaging will that be, or was there kind of an acceptance that some of Chelsea's players cost more than Middlesbrough's entire team?
Well, that is true. You know, we went into that. We obviously, first of all, playing the Aston Villa in the FA Cup. Aston Villa were really flying high at that time, and to be beaten by a deflected goal in the last few minutes, that was a real sort of shot in the arm for everybody, because we were beset by injuries at that time, and with players away in Asian Cup, and then we went into that first leg against Chelsea and won the game. They missed a hatful of chances, but at the same time, we defended so well, and then we went away to Millwall, didn't we? And had a really good victory there, and so things were setting up quite well for that second leg at Chelsea. But there was always the reality that if Chelsea did actually play, and surely that you know, from that first leg they were really hurting. That those big name players had not performed. But it was really sad to, you know, after 15 minutes we were holding them, and then one goal went in the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. And I'm old enough, Joe, to have been there before in a semi-final of the League Cup where we were 1-0 up against Manchester City and then got beaten 4-1. But this was even worse, obviously. But I think the fact that everybody was chanting at the end and as a crowd, and that we kind of tried to make the most of the occasion, I think that helps really, and so we can bring that atmosphere into the game. And yeah, it's just the reality of the way it is. Chelsea have just spent so much more money than us, and sadly the Premier League is on another plane, as Sunderland found out when they played Newcastle. But Chelsea are a one-off team, aren't they? They just cannot perform two games in a row, and that's the thing for the Championship. Who can be consistent now in the rest of this? There's probably, what do you reckon, two playoff places to go for, and it's whoever be.
Sorry, you just broke up there, Rob. I think you were talking about kind of the playoff places. Obviously, Sunderland and Middlesbrough both kind of going for a top 6 spot. I think, were you saying there's kind of maybe 2 up for grabs with those kind of top 4 teams pulling away a little bit?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely it, isn't it? And it's whoever can get some momentum going down, some consistency, which is the problem with the Championship, or it's the best thing about it, whichever way you look at it, in that everyone's pretty well matched up, and apart from those parachute clubs, but obviously Ipswich are the team that sort of they're the one sort of difference from that this season. But yeah, just hoping now that we can go on a run, and no doubt Sunderland are hoping that they can go on a run and string some results together.
looking ahead to Sunday's game, then Middlesbrough and Sunderland, just 3 points separate them ahead of the game. I mean, how much is this game kind of heightened in Middlesbrough? That kind of is usually talk before these kind of games. Is it a derby? Isn't it a derby? But it's two teams going for playoff spots. But you mentioned there it's going to be a sellout crowd. Middlesbrough are going to be up for it. But how much kind of extra is this game heightened by the fact that it's Sunderland and it's two teams quite close together?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's absolutely it. It's. I think Michael Carrick said yesterday that it wasn't a sort of be all and end all. It wasn't going to decide anything, but it's going to give either side a big advantage. And they're going to be all these head to heads from now on till the end of the season for both clubs. But yeah, I think it would give us from Middlesbrough, it would be a really big win to complete what would be completing a double over Sunderland. So, and we're thankful that, well, Sunderland have got a pretty bad record of the Riverside, and they had at the Ayresome Park lately. So, be great. We'd be big boost to us to get the double over Sunderland this season.
When you mentioned it earlier that Middlesbrough are dealing with a couple of injury setbacks, and just looking at their list of top goal scorers this season. So Morgan Rogers is the top scorer with 7, but he's now been sold to Aston Villa. Then Emmanuel Latelath has got 7. He's injured for this game. Isaiah Jones has got 6, and he scored 1 at the Stadium of Light, didn't he, back in October? He's injured as well. So quite a few injuries. You mentioned a few players have been away at the Asian Cup. So Riley McGree with Australia, we don't think he's going to be available. So how kind of big a loss are these players, and maybe who is the biggest loss out of some of the players that are going to be unavailable?
Well, obviously we're going to have to deal with the fact that Morgan Rogers has gone now. Big money. We made a lot of money on him, didn't we? And he was just developing, really. As a real sort of threat to defences with Middlesbrough, he was looking more and more confident. So that's a big loss. Riley McGree, we haven't seen much of him this season. He was just making a couple of substitute appearances before he went off to play for Australia. We're hoping that he comes back and can click into the mould again. We've just bought Finn Azaz to replace, I guess, effectively to replace Morgan Rogers. He's a player with a lot from Aston Villa, but has had a lot of experience on loan at Plymouth. I think he's going to be very important now. But yeah, Josh Coburn is our only sort of out and out forward that's fit, and he's not fully fit. We're having to be very careful with him, playing him through games. So that is a big weakness for us coming out of that transfer window. Lack of forwards, and of course having lost Chuba Akpom before the start of the season, and Cameron Archie, your top 2 scorers. That's been a problem through the first half of the season. But the third highest scorer was Marcus Forss, who also played at Sunderland, if you recall. He's just come back, and he scored 2 in 2 his first 2 games back. So I think he could be a key player on Sunday.
Well, you mentioned Josh Coburn there, a player who was actually at Sunderland's academy when he was younger. Another player who was at Sunderland is Sam Greenwood, a player who's on loan at Middlesbrough from Leeds. He scored 5 league goals this season. His first goal for Middlesbrough actually came back in that game in October at the Stadium of Light. But
that's right.
How's he kind of done? How's he kind of kicked on since that game?
I think it's been a big ask for him to play. He's played pretty much every game, and if you look back at his record at Leeds, he hadn't started that many games really. So it's a big season for him, and so he's maybe lacked consistency through that, but he does keep popping up with goals or assists, and he keeps sort of he keeps putting in those performances that mean that that keeps him in the team, and he does seem to like a big occasion. And for him, with his links to Sunderland, obviously that I wouldn't discount him having a big impact tomorrow.
Yeah, I remember him speaking before that game at the Stadium of Light, saying that all his family and friends are Sunderland fans, and that he's maybe Dad was going to be in the away end because he was supporting him.
Yeah.
But he's definitely got those links, hasn't he?
That's right.
It'll be interesting to see how he does. But how will Middlesbrough approach the game? Obviously, they're at home. They're at the Riverside. Sunderland are a team that like to come and dominate possession. But how will Michael Carrick kind of set his team up? Will they try and I remember at the Stadium of Light, they were quite brave in possession. They were trying to play out from the back, even though they were away from home. And it doesn't look like a team that are going to kind of sit deep and hit Sunderland on the counter-attack, maybe.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting to see, because we've, as of late, our home record has not been very good, because teams have been sitting back themselves and hitting us on the break, and we've not been able to break them down. And of course, Isaiah Jones was he played phenomenally, didn't he, at Sunderland, I thought, and he's missing from the start. So we're missing a lot of pace. Be very interesting to see whether it's a case of the two fullbacks, the two Lukes, Luke Ayling, and we think Luke Thomas. I mean, that's a great signing, I think, and they both are really.
So he could make his debut. A lot of experience on Sunday, Luke Thomas.
Yeah, and they're both very experienced, even though Luke Thomas is very young. And I expect a lot of them from them attacking wise as well as defensively, especially with them, wingers being out and Morgan Rogers having left. So yeah, be interesting to see how we set up. I think we'll be trying to pass. We always play that way. We a lot of possession, but without Jones, without the pace of Lath as well. And without Morgan Rogers, it'll be interesting to see if how we approach the game.
What's kind of been the view on Michael Carrick? He's been now there just over a year, hasn't he? Obviously, he was a great start to his managerial career at Middlesbrough. He got them into the playoffs last season, but then lost a lot of players in the summer. Have had a bit of a difficult start to this season, but seems like they've kind of recovered now and have another chance of getting in the playoffs. But how do kind of Middlesbrough fans view him there at the Riverside?
I think they think of him as sort of, even though he's quite new to being a manager, he's a very calm head. That was shown at the start of this season when we didn't start very well, but he was very cool when everybody else was panicking. And he seems to be he's very level-headed, doesn't get too excited, but he seems to be very committed. We've had a lot of changes, as of Sunderland, obviously, managerial. And sometimes that's been a manager that's wanted to progress far too quickly, or as far as we're concerned, or results have gone against them. But Carrick seems to be here he wants to do a really good job here. He's really committed to the club and to the whole sort of idea, and he really gets a buzz off the fans, I think, and constantly remarks about that. And I think it was very popular, and he's just a sort of like really calm, understated guy, but thinks very deeply about things, and it's great to have some sort of stability, and that's what both clubs surely need: a manager that's going to stick around for a couple of years, and a board that's going to sort of put their faith in the manager long term.
Yeah, he certainly comes across very calm in all the press conferences that he does. And he was asked in his press conference ahead of this game about the 4-0 game back in October, and he kind of said that that's going to have no bearing on the game this weekend. Dan Neil was, of course, sent off right before half-time when the game was 0-0, and that had a big bearing on the game as a whole. But have you seen much of Sunderland this season, aside from that game at the Stadium of Light, and how do you think the two sides are going to match up on Sunday?
I've just seen little bits on telly. Obviously, watched the game against Newcastle. It's difficult to judge in that, because as Middlesbrough saw with Chelsea, that Premier League teams are just so much above the resources they've got. I think there's quite a lot of similarities between the two teams in the lack of consistency and a few injuries for either team really affect things, and that's the case right the way through the league, really. So I think it's a pretty good matchup. obviously the 4-0 has no bearing going into this whatsoever. Although the fans will try to try and emphasize that the 4-0. But yeah, I just think back to over the years, there's been a lot of big games between us. I remember going back to Brian Robson's time when a Sunderland result at Riverside really sort of stuck the knife in and put us in real massive relegation problems. But I can remember a lot of big victories that have as well for Borough. So yeah, just looking forward to something memorable again, because I think there'll be goals, and I think it'll be I think it will be a good derby game, and because I do think of it as a derby game myself.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of similarities as well about how the two clubs are trying to recruit as well now. Sunderland have been doing this for a while, and it seems like Middlesbrough kind of went down that direction in the summer of trying to sign kind of young up-and-coming players that can kind of develop at the club and maybe potentially either be sold in the future or become very good assets for the football club. But
yes.
So Rob, we'll just finish by, we just usually finish by asking our guests just for a quick score prediction. How do you think the game is going to go on Sunday at the Riverside between Middlesbrough and Sunderland?
I'm going to go for 2-0, Joe. I think there'll be I think
2-0 home win.
Home win, and hopefully 11 players stay on the pitch.
Yeah, hopefully 11 players stay on the pitch. Yeah, I think that kind of ruined the game, didn't it, last time at the stadium? Like, obviously not from a Middlesbrough point of view, but it was very controversial. Dan Neil getting sent off for that. But I think as you say, I think there'll be goals. I'll go for a 1-1 draw. I think it's two quite evenly matched teams. If 11 players do stay on the pitch for both sides, so I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. But of course, it is live on Sunday. It's on the TV, 12 o'clock kickoff. So up early for that one at the Riverside. Rob, thanks a lot for joining me on the latest episode of the Raw podcast. And if you like what we do here at the Raw podcast, you can subscribe to wherever you listen to your podcasts on YouTube, Spotify, and you can also leave us a review. And for the latest SAFC news, you can head over to the SAFC section of the Sunderland Echo website for all the build-up ahead of Sunday's match. And we'll also have live updates, analysis, and more from the Riverside as Sunderland take on Middlesbrough. So once again, thanks a lot for listening to the Raw podcast.